Welcome back now for the news in detail. Kurdish forces claim to have repulsed a fresh Turkish ground attack in northeastern Syria. In a statement, the SDF said Turkey's attempted ground assault on the border town of Tal Abyad was thwarted. The SDF said they held off another incursion attempt further east in Ras Al Ain. Turkey bombarded targets in Kurdish-controlled areas on Wednesday to pave the way for an invasion. Ankara says the operation is aimed at establishing a buffer zone inside Syria. The Turkish Defense Ministry insists the operation was going as planned. Late last night, Ankara launched a cross-border assault that has drawn international condemnation. Meanwhile, the United States has proposed sanctions against Turkey for its military action against Kurdish fighters in northeastern Syria. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen introduced the planned curbs. The proposed embargoes target U.S. assets held by Turkey. They also suggest imposing visa restrictions on Turkey's leadership, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Senator Graham criticized the White House for refusing to act against Turkey. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. did not encourage Turkey to launch the attack.
Yeah, well, that's just false. The United States didn't give Turkey a green light. We'll continue to be in a position to do what we need to do to keep the American people as safe as we possibly can.
Senator Graham says it is not yet clear if the proposed sanctions will have enough support to be passed by both the Congress and the U.S. Senate. Now, moving on, an urgent closed-door meeting of the UN Security Council has been called today over Turkey's military action in northeast Syria. The UK, France and Germany requested the meeting after Turkey launched its military offensive. The international community has expressed concern at Ankara's actions. European capitals have criticized the Turkish offensive against Kurdish forces, warning the move could lead to an ISIS resurgence. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says the operation risks destabilizing the region and harming civilians. The Arab League has also called an emergency meeting for Saturday over the development. In a statement, Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry said the operation is a threat to regional security. The UAE has called the offensive unacceptable aggression against the sovereignty of an Arab state. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan will visit Saudi Arabia and Iran to diffuse tensions in the Middle East. Now, last month, U.S. President Donald Trump asked the Prime Minister to reconcile differences between both countries. In a press brief, Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammad Faisal said the tour could happen without giving a time frame. Speaking on occupied Kashmir, Faisal said New Delhi's human rights violations continue in Indian-occupied Kashmir since 5th of August. He said Beijing backs Islamabad's stance on occupied Kashmir. Discussing Kartarpur corridor, Faisal said Pakistan has officially invited former Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh for the inauguration ceremony. Azad Kashmir's President Sardar Masood Khan says the UN Security Council should save the people of occupied Kashmir from Indian atrocities. As the curfew and communications blackout enters its 67th day, the president said he is disappointed by what he called a muted response from the United Nations Security Council on the Kashmir dispute. Speaking at a conference in Islamabad, Khan said China, Turkey, Malaysia and Iran have openly condemned Indian oppression in Kashmir. In his address, Pakistan's State Minister for Parliamentary Affairs Ali Muhammad Khan said Indian oppression has internationalized the Kashmir dispute. He said Prime Minister Imran Khan is highlighting the Kashmir issue at all international forums and China has assured Pakistan of its support in resolving the dispute. Condemning New Delhi's illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir, 132 students and teachers have written to the Indian government. Now, in a letter to Prime Minister Modi, they protested against India's human rights violations in the valley. The letter read 8 million people of the valley have been under lockdown for more than 2 months now. Mentioning the communications blackout, they said such a move is simply unacceptable and an ominous sign for India. The letter also makes a case against detentions, shortage of food and health facilities, and violent attacks on students in the valley. The India-imposed clampdown and communications blackout has now entered its 67th consecutive day. Twitter says it will no longer unilaterally suspend or terminate verified accounts of Pakistani users. National Information Technology Board CEO Shabahat Ali Shah says the micro-blogging site made an agreement with Islamabad. In a tweet, he said the deal was reached after Islamabad shared its concerns over unreasonable suspensions. Shah said an understanding was developed following a conference call with the company's policy officials in the UAE. Over 300 accounts have been suspended for tweeting in support of occupied Kashmir since 5th of August. In a ceasefire violation along the line of control, a Pakistani soldier has been martyred in unprovoked firing by Indian forces. Pakistan's military says 2 women have also been wounded by the cross-border gunfire at Baro and Chirikot sectors. In a statement, the military's media wing Inter-Services Public Relations said troops targeted Indian army posts in response. It also said there are reports of Indian military casualties after Islamabad's strong response across the border. The tensions between Pakistan and India have escalated after New Delhi illegally annexed occupied Kashmir on 5th of August. Meanwhile, hundreds of students have protested across Bangladesh days after a student was killed after he criticized a water deal Dhaka signed with India. Teachers have also joined students in demonstrations that have spread across the country in the last 2 days. 21-year-old Abrar Fahad was allegedly killed by members of the students' wing of the ruling party on Monday. He was beaten for 6 hours after posting a Facebook comment. He criticized the deal allowing India to take water from a Bangladeshi river. U.S. President Donald Trump says he will cooperate with the impeachment inquiry if it's authorized with a full vote. President Trump showed a sign of potential cooperation a day after the White House called the inquiry unconstitutional. Meanwhile, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky said President Trump did not seek to blackmail him. More in this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump is facing a congressional inquiry for asking Ukraine's help to probe former Vice President Joe Biden. The White House has criticized Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi for not calling a vote of the full chamber to authorize the investigation.
Then it turns out that the whistleblower is a Democrat, strong Democrat, and is working with one of my opponents as a Democrat that I might end up running against. The whole thing is a scam. It's a fix.
Trump said the case could be heard in the Supreme Court and go on for years. He added the Republican Party is being treated unfairly by the Democrats. However, the Democrats maintain their position.
In full view of the world and the American people, Donald Trump has violated his oath of office, betrayed this nation, and committed impeachable acts. You know, to preserve our Constitution, our democracy, our basic integrity, he should be impeached.
President Trump now awaits a full vote so the impeachment probe can be debated in court. Ukrainian President Zelensky says Kiev is unlikely to publish its version of a transcript of a July 25th phone call between him and Trump.
Moving on, Germany says Ukraine's acceptance of the Steinmeier formula is enough to go ahead with the Normandy format summit. Chancellor Angela Merkel was discussing the coming meeting in a phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The German cabinet's official spokesman Stefan Seibert says both leaders agreed the requirements for the meeting were met on October 1st. Seibert said Merkel and Zelensky believe Russian gas should be delivered to Europe through Ukraine as soon as possible. The Normandy 4 group, comprising Russia, Germany, France and Ukraine, is pushing to meet this month. But Russia has put forward more preconditions for talks after Kiev agreed to its proposed solution for the Donbass region. Now it's time for a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. Tunisia's Ennahda party has won the country's parliamentary elections. The Election Commission says the party took lead with 52 deputies. The 217-seat chamber is now likely to have a fractured coalition government. Ennahda will be the largest party in Tunisia's new parliament, but it may struggle to build a governing coalition with just 52 seats. The Heart of Tunisia party came in second with 38 members, followed by the Democratic Current Party with 22. This is the second parliamentary election since the Tunis Revolution of 2011. The Libyan army says it has shot down a warplane over southern Tripoli. The aircraft came from the eastern forces of Commander Khalifa Haftar. The army's media department says the warplane tried to land at Al-Watiya airbase but crashed. It says the plane, identified as a Russian Sukhoi, had been targeting Libyan army forces at Al-Azizia. In the meantime, heavy clashes have erupted after the Libyan army attacked Haftar's LNA forces in the regions of Al-Saibiyah and Al-Tawaisha. The European Union's Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says the bloc cannot accept the latest proposals from London. Speaking in European Parliament, Barnier said a Brexit deal ahead of October 31st will be very difficult. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said he would not exclude a deal. He called for the blame game over Brexit to come to an end. European Parliament head David Sassoli said EU lawmakers are ready to accept a Brexit delay, but the request should come from London. In Ecuador, President Lenin Moreno has ordered a curfew around government buildings after clashes between protesters and police left 62 people dead. They were protesting against rising fuel prices. Almost 680 people have been arrested since the anti-austerity protests began last week, when President Lenin Moreno cut fuel subsidies. But the government has failed to quell the unrest. The Moreno has accused ex-President Rafael Correa of wanting a coup with the help of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. In Australia, 2 people have died in a bushfire in rural New South Wales state. Officials say more than 70 homes have been destroyed by spring fires. This has further strained communities already suffering from the region's worst drought. Officials scored blazes in New South Wales have ravaged more than 198,000 acres of land this week alone. There are currently close to 40 bushfires still ongoing across New South Wales and Queensland. On Tuesday in Queensland, fires forced residents of several towns to evacuate.
It's a horrible outcome, but a sobering reminder, a truly sobering reminder of the ferocity, these dangerous and destructive fires that we've seen burning across northern New South Wales for months now, and certainly in recent weeks have turned deadly.
3 scientists have won the 2019 Nobel Prize for Chemistry for developing rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. 97-year-old American John Goodenough became the oldest winner of a Nobel Prize. He shares nearly $1 million award with Britain's Stanley Whittingham and Japan's Akira Yoshino. The Nobel Committee said lithium-ion batteries have revolutionized human lives since they entered the market in 1991. After they laid the foundation of a wireless fossil fuel-free society, Whittingham developed the first functional lithium battery in the early 1970s. Goodenough doubled the battery's potential in the following decade, and Yoshino eliminated pure lithium from the battery, making it much safer to use. Now, the dengue outbreak in South Asia has claimed scores of lives this year. The World Health Organization estimates there are about 390 million infections every year. But heavy rains are only making the situation worse. In Bangladesh, 160 people have died since January, whereas the total number of patients stands at almost 14,000. In Pakistan, 40 people have died and over 10,000 dengue cases registered this year. India has more than 1,100 reported cases, with the death toll put at 56. Authorities say torrential monsoon rains have increased the number of cases. They say the inefficiency of governments in controlling flooding makes matters worse. Countries such as Vietnam, the Philippines and Malaysia have also been hit by dengue outbreaks in recent months. The 5th China Helicopter Exposition has just opened in Tianjin. The event offers rotorcraft industry professionals the chance to show their skills. The Aviation Industry Corporation of China says the 4-day event will run from October 10th to 13th. The show offers a business-to-business platform with static and dynamic demonstrations as well as conferences. The expo is expected to attract aviation professionals from China and around the world. The credit rating agency Moody's has slashed its economic growth forecast for India for the second time in 3 months. Moody's Investor Service predicted India's GDP drop in the current fiscal year from its earlier forecast of 6.2%. The ratings agency lowered India's growth forecast from 6.8% in August. This means Moody's has reduced its growth forecast for India by 1% over the last 3 months. In a note, Moody's said compared to 2 years ago, the prospects for India sustaining GDP growth of 8% has significantly diminished. According to the central bank, India's growth fell to a 6-year low of 5% in the April-June quarter. Meanwhile, stock markets in Europe are trading mixed ahead of high-power trade talks between the US and China today. Asian bourses have closed mostly higher on reports that the US could announce concessions for telecoms giant Huawei. The CAC 40 index in Paris is trading nearly 0.5% higher. Frankfurt's DAX index is also fractionally up, but the FTSE 100 in London is flat. In Asia, the Shanghai Composite gained 0.75%. Asia's richest index, the Nikkei 225 in Tokyo, is also up nearly 0.5%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng retreated from earlier gains on conflicting reports about US-China trade negotiations. International oil prices have rebounded slightly from this week's decline, with Brent futures selling for over $58. Now let's have a look at the weather updates. Well, that's all for now. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.